I signed the divorce papers that morning, the sharp smell of fresh ink mingling with the cold scent of bureaucracy in the sterile office. I watched as my hand, steady despite the tumult within, glided across the document, severing the once sacred bond that had bound me to my husband. My ex-husband, now. The finality of the action echoed in the silent room, leaving a bitter aftertaste of regret and relief. The lawyer, a man in his mid-40s with a comforting air of neutrality, offered me a sympathetic smile as he filed away the finished paperwork. It hit me then, it was over. The past 10 years of my life, a decade of shared dreams, whispered promises, and broken vows over. 3 years later, I found myself in a bustling cafe tucked away in a trendy corner of the city. A new life, a new city. The aroma of freshly ground coffee filled my senses, a welcome distraction from the scattered thoughts that often threatened to consume me. I watched the world rush by from my sanctuary, the vibrant pulse of urban life a stark contrast to the rural tranquility I had left behind. My favorite part of the day was the early morning rush, the cacophony of hurried orders, clattering crockery, and the steamer's soft hissing providing a familiar, comforting soundtrack. I, the owner of this little nook of heaven, found solace in the humdrum routine. Amid the chaos, a sense of peace. I was arranging the pastries on the display when the door chimed, signaling the arrival of a customer. I glanced up, the polite greeting on my lips freezing as I recognized the man standing there. My ex-husband, his charming smile a ghost of our past. His eyes, once devoid of emotion for me, now held a mixture of surprise, regret, and something I couldn't quite place. His arrival was a brutal reminder of what I had left behind, a jagged piece from the past intruding my present. But as the initial shock waned, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. This was not the frail, broken woman he had left behind. I had changed, grown, learned to value myself. I looked at him squarely and gave him a nod, my heart steady in my chest. "Welcome to my cafe," I said, knowing with certainty that this was my world now, and he was just a visitor. I watched as he took a seat at the corner booth, his long fingers absently tracing the worn edges of the menu. I felt a strange pull towards him, an inexplicable connection that made my heart flutter in my chest. His eyes, a vivid blue, sparkled with an intensity that momentarily took my breath away. I shook my head, trying to regain my composure, reminding myself that I was no longer the naive girl who'd fallen for sweet words and empty promises. As I moved to take his order, I noticed the slight tremor in his hands. It was a subtle sign of nervousness that seemed oddly out of place for a man with such self-assured posture. The cafe was empty except for the two of us. I dismissed my staff early, feeling the need for solitude after the day's emotional upheaval. As I prepared his order at the counter, I felt his gaze on me. I found myself caught in the rhythm of the mundane task, my thoughts wandering back to the past. I remembered the first time I'd seen him, at a boisterous house party during our college days. He was the life of the party, charming and charismatic. But later that night, I'd found him sitting alone on the porch, staring at the moon with a quiet intensity that had drawn me to him. I wondered if he remembered that night as vividly as I did. I placed his order in front of him, my hand steady despite the turmoil in my heart. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a mix of emotions that I couldn't quite decipher. "Thank you," he said, his voice husky with an undertone of regret. As I retreated behind the counter again, I found my thoughts swirling with questions. Why was he here? Was it merely coincidence, or was there a deeper reason? The answers weren't clear, but the one thing I knew for sure was that I was not the same woman he'd known all those years ago. I was stronger now, more confident. Yet, in spite of everything, I couldn't help but feel the stirring of old emotions. With a deep breath, I steeled myself for the conversation to come. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. After all, this was my world, and I was in control. I watched as he entered the room, his dark eyes scanning the space until they landed on me. His surprise was palpable. I allowed myself a small, secret smile. He had always underestimated me. We locked eyes and I felt my heart flutter in the same old, familiar way. He sauntered toward me, his easy grace reminding me of the man who had once stolen my heart. I forced myself to remain calm, to keep the power in my hands. I needed him to see me as an equal, not as the woman he had left behind. "Didn't expect to see you here," he admitted, surprise still lingering in his voice. I breathed in the scent of his cologne, a mixture of sandalwood and sea salt that was distinctly him, and it took me back to another time, another place. "Things change," I replied, offering him a cool smile. It felt strange to be so detached, so distant with him. But this was necessary. I needed him to see the woman I had become. The room was filled with the low hum of conversation, but all I could focus on was the man standing in front of me. His broad shoulders were wrapped in a navy suit, the color a stark contrast to his tan skin. I noted the strands of gray in his hair, a sign of the years that had passed since we last met. It was disconcerting how much he had changed, and yet remained the same. "I've missed you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The raw honesty in his voice was unexpected, and it took me a moment to recover. "I've missed you too," I admitted, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. It was the truth, though. Despite the years, the pain, and the anger, I had missed him. I missed the shared smiles, the late-night conversations, the comfort of his presence. "I hope we can start again, on new terms," he said, his eyes pleading with mine. My heart ached at the sincerity in his voice, but I knew better than to let my emotions take control. "New terms," I repeated, my voice calm and steady. I looked him in the eye, unblinking. "We can try," I conceded, offering him a small nod. But inside, I was a whirlwind of emotions. I knew I was treading on dangerous ground, but I couldn't deny the pull I still felt toward him. As I walked away, I felt his gaze burning into my back. I knew this was just the beginning, and I wasn't sure if it was the start of something beautiful or a disaster waiting to happen. But I knew one thing for sure: I was ready for whatever came next. I woke the next morning with a sense of exhilaration. The sun streamed through the window, casting a warm, golden light over my room. My heart thrummed a rapid beat, like the wings of a hummingbird, as I recalled the events of the previous night. I had taken a leap, stepping out of my comfort zone and into the unknown, and the thrill was intoxicating. I got out of bed, my bare feet brushing against the cool wooden floor. I could still feel the echo of his hand in mine, the warmth of his touch lingering. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, searching my own eyes. There was a spark there, a glint of anticipation tinged with fear. I touched my lips, half expecting to feel the heat of his lingering kiss. I shook my head with a faint smile. No, this wasn't like me, to be lost in daydreams of a man, a stranger essentially. But here I was, a woman transformed. I spent the day wandering around, lost in my thoughts, the memory of his voice playing in my mind. I retraced our steps from the night before, as if trying to capture the essence of our encounter. I strolled down the cobblestone streets, past the cafe where we had shared coffee and laughter. The scent of fresh pastries and strong coffee filled the air, a sensory reminder of our time together. I paused outside the cafe, the echo of our shared laughter still ringing in my ears. As the day wore on, my mind was filled with 1,000 questions. What did last night mean? What did he think of me? What did I think of him? I felt like a teenager again, lost in the tumultuous sea of emotions that came with the uncertainty of a budding romance. Evening came, and with it, a sense of restlessness. I found myself standing before the mirror again, scrutinizing my reflection. Was I being foolish? Perhaps it was just an infatuation, the result of a chance encounter. But there was something more, something deeper, a connection that I couldn't deny. And it terrified me. I curled up on my window seat, watching the city lights twinkling below. I was on the precipice of something, a vast, unknown territory that was both exciting and terrifying. A sense of anticipation hung heavy in the air, like the electricity before a storm. I stared at my phone, his number burning in my mind. I took a deep breath, summoning my courage, and dialed his number. The ring echoed in the quiet room, a reverberation of my beating heart. I held my breath as I waited for him to answer, the start of the next chapter in my life just a heartbeat away. I wandered out to the balcony, gazing upon the city's twinkling lights framed by the velvety darkness. The cool breeze kissed my cheeks, making the loose strands of my hair dance. The scent of night-blooming jasmine wafted from the garden below, conjuring an image of the time we walked together under the stars. A pang of longing resonated within me, a longing for his presence, his deep voice, and his warm laughter. Suddenly, I heard a knock on the door. Turning around, I noticed a silhouette standing outside my apartment. My heart pounded wildly against my ribs, as if trying to escape its confines. I drew in a deep breath and walked towards the door. An indescribable tension hung in the air, thick as fog. I opened the door, and there he was, standing in front of me. His eyes were like two pools of molten chocolate, brimming with unspoken words. My heart fluttered like a bird caged within my chest. I swallowed, the sound echoing in the silence between us. I thought you left, I stuttered. He glanced down, his hands fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. I did, he confessed, his eyes meeting mine once more. But I realized something I should have realized a long time ago. I waited for him to continue, my pulse racing in anticipation. He took a step closer, the distance between us melting away. I love you, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. His confession hung in the air between us like a delicate crystal about to shatter. For a moment, I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. Then, without thinking, I launched myself into his arms. He held me tightly, as if I were his anchor in a stormy sea. "I love you too," I murmured against his chest. His laughter filled the air, a melodious sound that made my heart soar. We stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, lost in a world of our own. As night fell, the city below us twinkled with 1,000 lights, each one a testament to our love. The scent of night-blooming jasmine, the whispering breeze, and his warm presence wrapped around me like a comforting blanket. The turmoil in my heart finally subsided, replaced by a sense of peace and contentment. As I nestled into his arms, I realized I was no longer alone. I found my harbor in the storm, my home in his arms.